Hi, everyone. I'm Nina Collins. We're here with Dr. Debbie Magids. This is we do this event on the third Wednesday of every month as part of the Revel Raging Gracefully series. It's an open webinar where we encourage attendees to write in the chat with questions and comments, which we'll incorporate into the conversation. And then this gets released as part of our Raging Gracefully podcast. Debbie is an amazing therapist in New York City. I always say I used to be her patient for many years. She kind of saved my life. I love Debbie.
Client, not patient.
Client, sorry, not patient. And we talk about different things every month, and we welcome your suggestions about things to talk about. Today, we're talking about breakups, which is a really good subject. And yeah, so welcome, Debbie, welcome attendees. Please post in the chat if you have questions or ideas. We'd love to hear from you. As I was preparing for this, I was kind of thinking, well, first of all, I should say I've been watching Sex and the City like an obsessive, crazy person. So I watched, and just like that, you know, the reboot. I'm sure your clients must be talking to you about Sex and the City, Debbie, this month, because it's made me go back and watch season from the very beginning, season 1, and it's brought up so many emotions for me about like getting older, and I'm surprised how open sexually they are. Those episodes I've kind of been brought, I was like, whoa, they're really talking about a lot in very great detail. And this was 25 years ago. It kind of surprised me. And they're just so young. It makes me ache for like our younger selves. Barbie in the audience says she's watching it again too. And the clothes are so great. But anyway, it's full of breakups and it's full of people behaving badly. And I'm also noticing, I read an article in The Vulture, which is part of New York Magazine, saying that Carrie is actually the villain of Sex and the City. I don't know if you've seen this article. And I don't know that I agree that Carrie is a villain. I love Carrie, but it did make me think, like, is Carrie a good friend? Would I want Carrie to be my friend? And she does this one thing in, I don't know, like episode 7, season 1, where she's just starting to date Big. And they've only been dating for like a few months, right? And she clearly feels like she's in love with him and he's the one. But she sees him one day, genuinely accidentally. She's walking down the street and she sees him coming out of church on a Sunday morning, but then she gets it with his mother. But then she gets this idea that she wants to meet his mother. And she says to him, I want to meet your mother. And he says, not yet. And she says, well, I want to go to church with you. And he says, not yet. And then she goes to church with a friend anyway that week. It's so rude. I was like, wow, that's like really not cool. So I'm having like a different experience of her relationship with Big and the way she handles it. Sorry, a little bit of a anyway, are your clients talking about Sex and the City?
Well, you know, interestingly, I mean, I watch just like that too, because we're in the same age decade, but I have a lot of younger clients. So they're not having the same experience. Like my clients in their 30s and 40s, it's a little different than the people that are now in their 50s or in their 20s. So it's different. My friends are talking about it more than my clients.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, I guess, for the generational. I know, I feel like I keep posting about it in the community, and I think people are probably like, shut up already, Nina, but I'm kind of obsessed.
I mean, before we get to the main topic, did you enjoy the new series?
I did. I didn't like it in the beginning. I thought that first episode was really cringeworthy, the way they were tackling kind of race and sex, and that scene where she masturbates Big or wants to see Big masturbate. I was like, I mean, that's a perfectly normal thing to do, but I thought the way they handled it was super awkward. But I came around to totally loving it. And I don't know if it's like, I've really just missed the characters. So being back with them feels like being in a warm bath. It just makes me so happy. And I also came to appreciate at the end of it that like they are tackling these, like the discomfort, the racial stuff, the white fragility, I mean, the wealth is it's just kind of gross, like the obscene wealth. Like, so there's totally stuff you can criticize, but I kind of felt like, you know, Charlotte with her transgender daughter or whatever, her gay daughter, however that will evolve. Miranda's drinking. These are all like real things that we're all dealing with. So why did you hate it? What did you think?
Mixed. I mean, I watched it because they're my friends, and I still watch all the repeats. I've always watched them. I didn't go back to them, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend more time, but I was critical of a lot of it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to be critical of. We're actually going to get one of the writers is a friend of mine, and we're going to get her to come do a Revel event, Alyssa
Oh,
which I think
that
will be
would be
really
amazing.
cool, where we can just
Yeah.
like ask questions. All right, so back to the
So,
subject at hand,
topic. Yeah.
breakups, everyone. We're going to talk about breakups. So I was thinking as I was preparing for this about how like, do we get better at breakups as we get older? And this week, because I'm watching Sex and the City, every time I ask a question, I feel like Carrie, like, do we get better at breakups as we get older? And she's like typing in her window. And of course, I think the answer to that is only, I mean, you'll tell me, but only if we're super emotionally healthy. Otherwise, no, right? We do whatever we do.
Yes.
In our lives, right?
I don't think, listen, overall, we chronologically get older, but our insides stay super young unless we work the heck out of ourselves to grow our insides up to match our outsides. So let's talk breakups. And obviously, you can give us examples and all of that. But, I wanted to start off by saying that in the same way that we're all different in terms of who we are, who we date, what we're drawn to, our patternings, we can be very different in what we do in breakups. There are some people who they break up and they find someone new right away, and they go for a very short mourning period, and they're like, they could be angry, you could be upset, but they date right away and they start going out right away and they just fill the void. And then there are some people who break up and they can never get over it and they stay in mourning for years. And then there's everyone else in between. And so in having this discussion, when I do these things, it's hard because they're the generalizations of what do you do for a breakup? And then there's the reality of people, and it's not cookie cutter, and we don't all manage the same things in the same way.
Right, of
And
course.
so, yeah, and that becomes the hard part, that people think, and a lot of my clients think that they're mourning for too long or they're not doing things quick enough. It's like, no, everybody has their own ways of doing things. It's not a right way. There's the right way for each individual. So I wanted to say that.
Yeah, and each relationship is so different. I mean, I remember my last marriage, it took me a long time to stop I didn't want to be with him. But it took me a long time. I mean, there's that rule, I guess, what's the rule of thumb? It takes half as long as you've been together to get over the person.
Well, but then based on patterning, some people could be with someone for 2 months and not get over them for years. It's just not cookie cutter. And like with you, since we use you a lot and you don't mind, and I know you're so well, it took you a long time to emotionally get over it, but you dated quite quickly.
Right. Well, I always do that, right?
Always do that. You always go to someone to fill the void, even if you're not fully over the last one, where someone listening or me, I'm not that way at all. I take a good long time to mourn. And then there's people in between.
Wait, back up. I want to hear more. How long do you take to mourn? So like you have a breakup and then do you just not see anyone for like 2 years?
Maybe.
Wow.
I mean, it goes different. Yeah. Like even, so I liken breakups to deaths. So I'll even go like when my father died, I wasn't right for more than a year. I functioned. It's not like I'm curled up in my bed. I'm out in the world. I'm functioning, and everyone thought that I should be better sooner. I'm like, no, because I don't distract myself. I stay in my pain until the pain is no longer there. And then I'm actually through the mourning period, where other people will distract themselves. So when it comes to a breakup, and I don't date easily either. So if I have fallen in love, the breakup I take hard because it was real love. It wasn't just a filler for me. And so I don't move on to the next at all until I'm just not sad anymore. I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm saying it's my way.
Well, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's right or wrong either. I think it's really interesting, but I also think it does sound very healthy because of course what my mind goes to literally when you describe that is I think life is too short. You're missing opportunities. You need to get back out there. Like I get a kind of panicky feeling because it would be hard for me to sit alone with my pain and let like the next year of my life go by and feel like I somehow wasn't living enough, or like it's for me it really does sound hard what you're describing.
Well, two things. It's a perspective. Like I think living life is not just about dating. But number two, I don't know that it's a choice. I do think mourning you shouldn't distract and feel, especially I think that you need to do a mourning period, but I think my mourning period is longer than the average person, and I don't know that that's healthy or unhealthy. I think that's my emotional makeup, like, so let's take Nina and I, because we know each other. I know you so well, and I think you know me well enough. Our two patterns, the healthiest way would be somewhere in between.
Mhm.
I probably take a little too long, and you probably don't take long enough.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? If we're to really put
Yeah.
a picture of perfect mental health would be a little longer for you and a little less long for me.
Right. I
So
mean, I definitely don't take long. My current boyfriend, he has this whole, he always said, you're not really over. You haven't resolved your last.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, it was fine. I'm done.
yeah.
And of course, I knew, but I was still, anyway, it's complicated,
It's
but
complicated. Exactly. So anyone listening, it is complicated. And, so my next thing is the blame thing. And that's why I caveat with everyone's different, but oftentimes when someone comes to me because they've gone through a breakup, and I do think that this is the way to go, I will always be focused on the person in my room, mirror up. Let's understand your part in the relationship. Let's understand your patterning. Let's understand why you were drawn to this person. Let's understand where you contributed to it not working. And then inevitably, people will start to learn about themselves. And then you go into blame and regret of, oh, if I only knew this sooner, maybe this would have worked out better. Maybe I could have done it differently. And I really caution for people to try to go back to an old relationship that didn't work out, because now you've grown and now you've changed in 1 month of figuring out your part. It's not true, but people do tend to, with time, start to look at themselves and blame themselves and think that if they could have just done things differently, it could have been different. And that may be true and may not be true, but it's not necessarily for the old relationship. The learning is for the new relationship.
right.
Going backwards to old relationships, it could work every once in a blue moon, but it's not the end goal. The end goal is to learn about yourself in a breakup so that you grow and change and get the lessons, and for the next relationship. And again, I use Nina. She went through so many iterations, and you are in your healthiest relationship because you learned and you learned and you learned and you learned.
Right.
Right.
It's one of, and just to Kathy, who just hopped on. Yes, this will be recorded and you can find it on Raging Gracefully, our podcast. It'll come out on Friday. I think that's one of the reasons I always really encourage people to do online dating after a divorce, or because I do feel, at least in my case, like practice, like unfortunately, and I've been saying this to two of my daughters who've just gone through big breakups, and they've been in such pain, but I keep kind of saying, like, the upside of this is like, you'll get better at it. Like, you keep learning from yourself. If you really do the work, you'll learn more about what you need and what your role was, and everything you just talked about makes so much sense to me.
Yes. And with every thing that hurts us, there is a lesson to be learned if you want to learn it. And, people always say that's crap when bad things happen. That's just a way to make yourself feel better. I don't agree with that. I do think that there's always a lesson and there's always the next thing coming, and that's part of also a breakup, of being able to look ahead, that it is momentary pain. And you're supposed to feel pain when you broke up with someone. You love someone, you gave yourself to someone. It's supposed to be painful. There is supposed to be a mourning period and a grief period. And there's also going to be the next part of your life. There's also going to be the next thing. So you have to be able to then shift to, there is something else coming. And let me learn all that I can learn about myself and about this connection so I can do it better the next time, and not stay stuck in the rat on the wheel patterning that we all have. If it didn't work for us, we want to learn from it so it can work a little bit better.
Right. So one of the flaws with someone like me just jumping back out and kind of dating again quickly is that you're, again, just distracting yourself and not thinking about what you did wrong. So in my case, I was lucky because I was in therapy with you. And so I did lots of work. Even though when I had my last breakup, I broke up with a short-lived second husband, and Debbie, I came into her office, and there'd been a dramatic thing and it was over, and she said, please don't go online, please don't date for at least a year. And I was like sobbing.
I don't know if I said a full year.
I think you did. I
said I would like a year, but I'll take.
You were like, I'll take 3 months, just don't date.
And
this was like 5 years ago. And of course, literally we broke up on like September 18th, I think. And by November 1st, I had met some guy and was like making plans to go to California for 6 months. It was really insane. But The whole thing was totally insane, but I've survived. And I do wonder, like, I'm in a lovely relationship now, but if it were to end, I hope that now, and now I'm in this place where I've gotten so happy being alone. I hope I'd be able to be alone, but I can see Debbie's skepticism. No, no,
not a
no.
chance. Patterns are patterns are patterns. You'd have to work really hard not to. The other thing I wanted to bring up, because there are a couple of things I just wanted to make sure to get out there, is when you go through a breakup, there's this thing called closure that everybody wants to do. My opinion on it is when someone says, I need closure, it means I really want to see this person. I want them to see that I look really good. I want them to still be in love with me. You're not done. You're looking to connect. You're not looking to end. Right. Once a breakup happens and it's happened, we don't really need more closure. We need to do the closure with ourselves. And I was
going to ask you this question about the whole kind of cold turkey thing. Like, is that what people should do? And you just, I remember saying to you once, it seems impossible that I'm never going to see this person again. And you were like, yes, that's the way breakups work.
You know, breakups are deaths. And actually, I think harder than death sometimes, because this person's still out there, only they don't want to see you anymore, or you don't want to see them. Versus when someone dies, it's so permanent, but there's not that extra pain of, and they didn't want to be with me. There is this added pain of, I'm never going to see them again. So it is a death, and it's being chosen. It's not what I wanted if you're the one who was broken up with. And so it is super hard, but yeah, the closure is in with self. The closure is in, and people do this a lot too, not idealizing the relationship. We tend to always think about all the parts that we miss, and we have amnesia about the parts that did not go well, especially as time passes. And if you're someone in my patterning, but even in Nina's, even though she moved on, she didn't fully move on. There's a yearning for something that we loved about that person, a familiarity, and that yearning makes us forget all the bad, because that yearning is so powerful.
Right. There are always certain things you kind of romanticize, or even though you can remember, I mean, I remember in the wake of that breakup, I tried all the time to just remember how abusive he'd been. Like, I would just kind of try and remember how awful it was.
Yeah.
But there were good things that I missed. And so then sometimes, and that's true in any breakup, right?
True in any breakup. And we tend to forget the bad when we're yearning for the good. And that's what propels people to go back to things, because when you go back to it, initially, when you meet up with someone, the good's there. And then eventually the rest shows up.
That shows up again, because it's not.
Yes. Speaking of which, I just want to also get out, when you're thinking about, one of the things I say to people when you're trying to get over someone is that you're not allowed to think about them. You have to shift your thought. We can't help what thoughts come in, but what we do is we indulge them, and then we're off to a whole daydream and remembering them. And I even talk about this in terms of masturbation. A lot of people will masturbate to their exes because something sexual was such a turn on. I'm like, you're not allowed to do that anymore. And I've had people say, like, but then I don't feel sexually turned on at the moment. I'm like, well, then that's what you have to do. Like, you are not allowed to think about them, because you need to start getting over them. And if you allow your thoughts to go there, feelings follow thoughts, and then you're back in that feeling again.
Yeah.
So you want to limit contact. Obviously, social media is a killer, especially for all my young people.
I was going to ask you about stalking. Like,
social media it could be the death of someone who's in love and got broken up with.
Yeah.
So you want to limit contact. You want to get people out of your phones, and you want to get them out of your thoughts. It's really important, because that's where it all lives in the end.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I'm having a feeling I had, I think, last month with you, where I thought, and I don't know that I did it, that I want to make sure my daughters listen to this, because that's really helpful stuff. And the thinking about closure with yourself, I really love. So let's go back to that for a sec. Like, the closure with yourself is the idea that you really take responsibility for what you did wrong, what your part was, not what you did
not
wrong.
what you did wrong.
Right.
What my part was, understanding your own blueprints and patternings and why you were drawn to this person, what felt painful there, what lessons can you learn? And, you move into sort of, the goal is acceptance.
Mhm.
versus trying to go back and course correct. It's really hard, and you've done it, I've done it, we've all done it. We've gone back to things.
Right.
And again, there's always an anomaly. It's not that someone who's gone back, it's never worked before.
Right. Right.
But
Most of the time it doesn't
most
work.
of the time, when you've had a lot of issues in a relationship and you leave it and you go back, even if you think you've changed, one thing that triggers an old thing between you, all of a sudden you're like, no, nothing's changed. It just opens up all the bad stuff, all the drama, all the trauma, all the pain. And it's really hard to go backwards. The whole point of closure is to accept yourself, accept who you were when you entered that relationship, accept that you're going to be a better version of yourself the next time, and accept that it's over, and stop wishing, hoping, regretting anything that happens in the past. It is a process. It is not an overnight thing.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
Regret is okay for a moment. Regret means I wish I had known better then, so I could have done better. But if you stay stuck in regret, your life stays the same. Regret's momentary when you're learning, and we all, as you grow older, who doesn't in hindsight be like, if I only knew better then, that might have gone differently. That's true, but you didn't know better then, and that's how it went.
Right.
So we have to take the learning and look forward and look forward and look forward. That's the only way to do it, and move into an acceptance that this is over, and then you open up to new love.
Take the learning. And this is a good example, Debbie, of something we really should write as an article together. This is all such good information. Take the learning and move forward. I'm writing it down. And who doesn't know that? I think anyone on this call right now, probably, if you're our age and you've been divorced, you know that so well. What you say, like when I deal with my ex-husband, the father of my 4 kids, who I was married to forever, it's literally like we can go back to a place in like 1992 if we want to. It's so weird, Someone in the audience says regret is the bargaining phase of grief. Different actions equal different results.
Yes. Well, if you look this topic up, a lot of people talk about like the mourning of a relationship is like going through the stages of grief. And so, that's one.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Thank you. Yeah.
And then Trisha asks, are you saying that you'll never get back together with your husband? No, I will never get back together with either of my husbands for sure. What I was saying, Trisha, is that when you have moments of regret and you think, oh, maybe we could do this differently, or maybe we've changed, and then you interact with them, either you try to get back together momentarily, which I think most of us have done, or you just interact with them in any way, your old pattern usually comes roaring back. Even if you are really much healthier, it's very easy for it to come back. Like I'm always really aware when I'm dealing with my ex-husband, say, or you can really apply this to any old relationship where when there's friction, your reactions, the knee-jerk reaction is the old one.
It is. It's like going back to your families. You always sort of feel right back to where you were. It's very hard to change patternings with people that you're already in that dance with. When you learn new outcomes for yourself and you start with someone new, you're creating a new dance. Like I've always said with Nina, her relationship now, they both have underpinnings of the old stuff that Nina was used to, but they both have done so much work on themselves that they've created a new patterning, even though at core, there's some similar old themes. And that's a healthier version of your patterning. You're still in pattern. You just both learn to behave differently with each other than you did in your past relationships.
Yep. Okay, what about the fear? Because you've said this a couple of times that, you just have to move forward. But what about the fear that there won't be a next person, which of course is a real fear for lots of people. I used to always have that fear. Like this is and one of my daughters who's had a breakup, literally, she's 23 years old. Like, could you be more perfect? And she thinks this is the last person who's ever going to love her, as if that's remotely possible.
That's the fear of everybody, and why people stay too long, and why people go back even though they knew it wasn't working. It's a real fear for everybody. The majority of people, it's not true for. There are some people that it's possible, right? It's a possibility. But if you stay like a rat on a wheel in the same stuff, we know what the ending is. We know where you're headed. If you make some moves and make some changes and move out into the world, there is possibilities for something new to come in. And we owe it to ourselves to be as happy as we can, be as open as we can, and at least do all that we can to open ourselves up to those new possibilities of something better for us if
Right.
it's
I
not
so
functioning.
agree. I
Mhm.
so agree. The story I always tell with my first marriage is I had a moment where I realized if I stay, I know what this will be like, more or
Yeah.
less. And if I
Yeah.
go, I don't know what will happen, but at least there's the possibility of wonderful things happening.
Exactly. And when you have that openness to you, wonderful things typically happen. But,
Yeah.
people want guarantees, and no one has a guarantee. But
There are no,
again, it's also going to be in everyone's patternings, right? Like your patterning, you'll never be alone. My patterning, I can be alone. We have different patternings,
yeah.
right? So there are some people who, I don't care if they're 80, if they lost a love, they will find the next love until the day they die. And everything else in between.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
when that fear comes up, also look at yourself and look at how it's always been. I promise you that if you've always been able to find the next person, you will always find the next person.
Interesting. Yeah, because someone in the audience is saying she wants to let go but can't seem to let go. And that is a problem. I mean, I guess to the woman in the audience who's saying that, Trisha, I would say also one thing my mother taught me, which I think really is true, is like you can't do anything until you're ready. As much as you're supposed to do something, sometimes it takes a long time. I mean, how many of us have had friends struggle with wanting to get divorced or wanting to break up with that guy, and then we make the mistake of saying you should break up with him, and then they stay together, and I mean, that's the classic. It can be very hard to let go. I mean, obviously it's
I will say that when someone is trying to let go of, I mean, I don't know if it's a divorce, but you process and you process and you process, and typically something will eventually happen where you just say to yourself, never again. I'm going to do whatever I need to do, but I won't let this feeling happen to me ever again. If it's that bad.
Yeah,
For
I
you
think
emotionally. And yeah, no one can do it for you. You can, you can just explore yourself until you're ready to take the leap.
right.
Sure.
And definitely, I think the thing to think about is you have no idea what's out there for you if you don't take the leap. Like it's the whole one door closes, another opens. So if you want to stay where you are in like a not great situation, you are not going to be, there won't be other possibilities.
I will also say, people sometimes make choices by not choosing. And so they're choosing the safe route. And one small shift in your life can open up so much change. It's really about action oriented. It's one thing to know yourself really well and do the work and feel your feelings and do the mourning and all of that stuff. It's another thing to then do something with it. If you don't make a new move, your life stays the same. And so,
but one small change isn't a breakup. I mean, a breakup is a big change. What's an example of one small
no,
change?
but what I'm saying is if you take a step, if you take a step towards ending something, you can then take another step and then take another step and then take another step. It's
I see what you mean. Sometimes it feels so overwhelming, and
that's why it's a process. Like you're not gonna, if you've been in love with somebody, you're not just gonna wake up on a Tuesday and be like, we're done. And that's why people break up and come back together, or separate and come back together and have conversations. And but each time, if you make one shift, say something you never said before, or take a stand where you never took a stand before, set a boundary where you never set a boundary before. Change is not one big kaboom. It's small little things that then will lead up to never again.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really good point. And of course, how many times have you heard your friend, or have you said yourself, but I love him? It's like, it doesn't matter if you love him. Like you should still break up.
I had my friend say, if you get back together with he's now my ex, but I'm sleeping in this closet for the rest of my life. And then she's like, I'm in the closet. Like the breakups, the back together, the breakups, the back together, especially when you're younger, but it can happen when you're older. It's intense and it's hard, but it's doable. So,
so again, just before we wrap up, I think you want to focus on like all the opportunity and the idea of closure and the work that you can do on yourself and what you can learn.
Yes. You have to be forward moving and positive thinking, not get stuck in the mourning part. But the mourning part is very important, and feeling bad. You're supposed to feel bad for a while. And that's why I am a believer in not just running out and dating right away and drinking, or I really think you should spend a little bit of time just in your emotions that need to be worked out. And some other small tips. I mean, these are, easy tips, but when you're in the middle of a breakup, you want to start to hone other parts of your life. You want to start to hone other connections that maybe you haven't paid as much attention to. You can get a lot from friendships. You can get a lot from, passion from work or passion from a hobby. You want to start filling yourself up with things other than another guy right away, because you do want to take some time to learn so that it can go differently the next time.
Right. That's always been the part I've been bad at, but you're
Yes.
right. Absolutely.
But you found your way anyway, so it's good.
Well, this has been great. I love this conversation. I feel like I should rush off and try and write it up. So much helpful information, Debbie.
Oh, my pleasure.
Do we have any remaining questions? There's been some conversation in the Zoom. This will, every week, Wednesdays at 3:00 Eastern, I do an interview with someone interesting. And then the third week of every month, it's with Dr. Debbie Magids. And we cover a different subject. And then these conversations are released as audio on our podcast, Raging Gracefully, which you can find wherever you find podcasts. You just Google Raging Gracefully podcast and it will come right up. You can download it on Apple, wherever. And Debbie has a website and a great Instagram, Dr. Debbie Magids. She's really fun to follow on Instagram. And I don't know, any other parting words we have to say? I can't remember. Every month I say the same thing. I can't remember what our topic is next month, but we have one.
Yes,
next month I'll try and be more prepared. I would love to hear from you guys in the audience if you have ideas for things you'd like us to cover. So please feel free to message me on the Revel app, email me at nina@hellorevel. Oh, and there's one more question that's come in, sorry, in the Q&A. Can you talk about friendship breakups where it's possible to just see each other less?
Yeah, interestingly, I typically always go to friendship stuff too, but this felt like more of a romantic breakup.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, friendship breakups are just as traumatic, especially if you've been longtime friends. And I think, these are hard questions because it depends on what the friendship breakup is. But yeah, you can absolutely, differently than with men, distance more from a friend and see them less and sort of morph the relationship into something other than completely tied into one another if it doesn't work anymore. But
Totally.
maybe we should do a
why don't we
on friendship breakups.
We should do a whole conversation about
friendships and friendship breakups and what friendships can mean, because they're very important, especially for women, in our age range. Without my tribe of women, I would have been really lost. So it's important. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll do another episode, another session on friendships and friendship breakups, because it is true. It's actually completely different. Like I've learned as I've gotten older, like there are a lot of, I don't want to burn bridges, but there are sometimes phases where you pull away and you do less. Some bridges have been burned.
Sometimes you have to end a friendship because it just doesn't work for you anymore and you don't want to be with that person. But in romantic relationships, very difficult to make them friends. Very difficult. It could happen every once in a while, but typically you just have to end it and move it on. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie. Lots of love to you.
Lots of love to you too. I'll see you soon.
Talk to you soon. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.